MedBix webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming. Hello, welcome to the MedBix webcast. This is Ramana Anamaraju. I'm the host. Thank you for coming. It's going to be a very interesting day today. I'm going to talk with one guest is my fellow physicist, Niek Schreuder is born in South Africa. He's going to talk about radiation oncology. What is the new techniques coming up in radiation side? It's going to be very interesting. Okay. But I am waiting for, then, I'm going to introduce you a little bit about the cancer before Nick comes in. Let me introduce you a little bit about what is the things we do in the cancer. Just a basic idea. I want to give it to you guys. Let me bring in the side. I'm going to be side. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about this. That's a Niek Schreuder. Dr. Uli is supposed to come, and I will tell you about innovatormd.com conference is starting tomorrow. So here, that's a housekeeping I'm talking about, innovatormd.com. Dr. Uli is supposed to be here. I hope he's here soon. Then I'm going to talk with the Niek Schreuder. But the Niek Schreuder, let me explain to you a little bit, just a background for that. One is the cancer, the treatment for the cancers these are the following. The first and foremost option is cancer is a surgery. No question about that. Then next is either chemotherapy or radiation therapy. That is one of the two things, top three are most popular ones. And popular means in the sense that those are the mostly used by the most of the medical system. Hormonal therapy is there. There is surgery is not a surgery. I repeated a surgery. It is a targeted drug, and then immunotherapy. All of them are new kind of second time I made a wrong one there, but it's supposed to be targeted therapy, immunotherapy. These are all new. Immunotherapy is kind of relatively coming up, and there's a lot of people as you know, surgery is basically cutting out the tumors out from the cancer, and the radiation is basically high beam, very high velocity. The particles we bombard with the tumor, and then sometimes with the different directions. And the chemo is a chemical drug. They use the drugs to kill the cancer. And then immunotherapy, the hormonal therapy is hormonal block the receptors, I think. And the targeted drug is kill the particular molecule. That is a targeted drug. And then immunotherapy is the immune system to fight the cancer cell, train the immune system to fight the cancer cell. So we are going to focus on the radiation treatment here. Out of the two radiation treatments, we have an external beam radiation. External beam radiation is, we bombard with high velocity particles to the tumor. Another was internal radiation therapy. That is they actually brachytherapy. They put inside the radium inside itself. They put the isotope inside the best medical, my friend Krish Sutantran does that. So that they do, that is that they put the radium, for example, radium hospitals used to be called. They put a radium directly on the cancer itself. But we are going to focus today about the external beam radiation. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Let me bring, then he can explain to me, he explained these things better than me. Let me bring Niek Schreuder, is a CEO of Leo Cancer Care. Let me introduce you. Okay, welcome Nick to the MedBix webcast.
Hey, great, Ramana. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you. You came before the beginning of my podcast days. It was exciting. Before you go into your chair and all those things, I wanted to, because you are an expert in all the radiation treatment, I wanted to do some of the particles. If you can if you can explain to people what this. You want to give some background of yours, Nick? Give me your background a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm a medical physicist by training, originally from South Africa, but I specialized in the beginning, right, all my entire career in particle therapy to irradiate cancer with particles, being neutrons or accelerated protons. And I've never really used carbon ions or helium ions, but you can do external beam radiation therapy by shooting a beam of radiation at the target inside the patient's body from outside the patient's body. That's called external beam radiation therapy. We introduced the concept of internal radiation, where you put the radiation inside the patient's body. But what I do, and I specialize my career in, is in particle therapy using either neutrons or accelerated protons. And when you shoot the particles in, they're very
Yeah,
heavy.
yeah. Nick, if you don't mind, I wanted to show you. Can you run down this? I'm going to show you this. This, but can you go through one by one, and then we can.
Yeah. Okay, great. So what you see on the spectrum there is all the particles, all the type of radiation being used for radiation therapy. So on the left top
Let
there,
us
you have,
talk about electron first. Yeah.
yeah, electrons basically is the lightest particle that is outside the nucleus, and every nucleus is surrounded by electrons, and you can accelerate these electrons in an electric field and again shoot them into the patient's body. But they're very light and they scatter all over the place, so they're really not highly focused. But they do stop at a certain point. But again, because they scatter so much, they do not have a discrete stopping point.
They're light
Now,
particles, right? They cannot penetrate too far into the body, right?
yes, I mean they you can of course get them very high energy and they go all the way through, but because they're very light, an electron is 1,800 times lighter than a proton. They scatter all over the place, and so they also do not stop at a discrete point. If you go protons, it's 1,800 times heavier than an
Yeah.
electron.
Let us start. Electron. What kind of cancers they usually treat with electron?
So electrons used to be used for shallow tumors,
Cancer,
that is,
skin cancer, probably, right? Melanoma.
yeah, skin cancer or something that's deeper than skin. Skin cancer you would typically just treat with radioactive source or with low energy X-rays. But if something was like deeper, but electrons really became problematic because they really do not stop at a very short distance. So your dose fall off beyond the stopping point was still fairly. You still give a significant dose to the tissues beyond the stopping point of the electrons.
Okay.
Now, protons, of course, stop
Then let us
abruptly.
talk about one by one. X-ray. What about X-rays?
Yeah. So X-rays, of course, then is what we all know. X-rays, when you go and you take a radiograph, and X-rays by nature is really good that they go all the way through the patient's body and they get attenuated by different densities in the patient's body. So you get low energy X-rays that is used for diagnostic purposes.
Yeah.
But if a tumor is deep, and let's say a prostate is in the middle of the patient's body, then you have to shoot the beam right through the patient's body, and you crossfire these beams. So where the beams cross over, you have the high dose. Now, how do you get X-rays? That's actually important. How do you get X-rays? X-rays is generated outside by electrons interacting inside the nucleus, and also interacting with the electron cloud around the nucleus. And if you shoot, for example, high energy electrons into a block of tungsten, then you get high energy electrons coming out from that interaction. So to generate the high energy X-rays, you need to shoot the electrons into a target. Then the X-rays comes out, but they go all the way through the patient's body and they attenuate more or less exponentially. So if you start with 100% at the skin, then if you go to a certain depth inside the patient's body, you might only have 50% of the X-rays left over.
Yeah.
Uh,
So it is
Now,
attenuation. Yeah.
X-rays and gamma rays are the same
Yeah.
electromagnetic radiation,
Yes.
but gamma rays comes from inside the nucleus. So gamma rays can only be produced by materials that are radioactive. So if you would take a piece of metal, you make it radioactive through various methods, but most commonly in a nuclear reactor, you can have a source that emits gamma rays, and the most known one is a cobalt source. that would emit gamma rays, and you can make that cobalt source so radioactive that you can put a gamma source, the cobalt source, at a distance from the patient, and the gamma rays comes out from the source and go through the patient's body. So the typical gamma rays from a cobalt source is kind of equivalent to a very low, to a high energy X-ray beam, but on the low energy side. Then, of course, these are all electromagnetic radiation. Electrons are particles. X-rays and gamma rays, electromagnetic radiation, which is the same thing as the light. It's just a higher energy. But then if you look at the bottom two, you get protons and heavy ions. And protons is physical particles. The proton, of course, is a hydrogen atom with one. A hydrogen atom has had one proton, one electron. If you strip the electron away, you have a proton. Heavy ions is everything else on the periodic table. As soon as you start going to multiple protons and multiple neutrons in the nucleus, then you have a heavy ion. So the one that's used most for clinical work is the carbon 12. So you take carbon, you strip some of the electrons off, it became positively charged, and you can accelerate them and shoot them into the patient's body. So that's in a nutshell what these
Yeah.
things are about.
You talked about neutrons. Tell us about the neutron scattering, neutron for treatments. How do they use the neutrons for the treatment side?
Yeah, so neutrons was postulated way back in 1937. Chadwick discovered the neutron, and 2 years later, they used neutrons to treat cancer with it. But the biology of the neutrons was not well understood. It resurged in the 60s, and then in the late 70s and 80s, we thought that the future of radiation therapy is all neutrons. Now, how do you get neutrons? Similar way you generate X-rays by shooting electrons into a target, you can shoot protons into a target, and then you knock the neutrons out of the target. So what we used in many facilities across the world, still used in a couple of facilities, mainly Seattle. University of Washington, Seattle still has one of those machines, but the most used technology was to use high energy 66 MeV protons onto a beryllium target, and now you get neutrons coming out at a very high flux and high enough energy that the neutrons can go through the patient's body. Now, the way the neutrons interact, remember, a neutron doesn't have a charge, an X-ray doesn't have a charge, so it's indirectly ionizing. The neutrons would knock out protons, lose the energy. The protons deposit the energy to the patient's body. The X-rays knocks out electrons. The electrons deposit the energy. So it's called indirectly ionizing. So neutrons looks similar to X-rays from a radiation dose delivery perspective.
Okay.
And protons and heavy ions look similar.
Protons or heavy ions like carbon, they use a special advantage in the physics, is Bragg effect, right? So
The Bragg peak,
when you stops that at the end, it's like a car. If you do a stop, immediate sudden stop of the car goes up. The energy is released quite a bit. If you make a sudden brake on the car, when you see traffic light, the car pushes go up. That means the energy is released. So same thing. That's called Bragg effect. Similar way, the Bragg effect, when you have a protons hitting that one, it is just to go there and the deposit more energy there. Can you explain a little bit about the Bragg effect, Nick?
Yeah. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating that in 1902, a guy with name was William Bragg postulated that if a charged particle, and he postulated for alpha particles, which was known at that point, if an alpha particle or a charged particle will go into a medium, then the charged particle is positively charged, and there's a lot of electrons flying around. So the positive charge would be attracted by the negative charge and slow down. So now let's go away from alpha particles and let's think about a proton. So if you shoot a proton into a patient's body, the proton is, of course, positively charged. There's a lot of electrons. The electrons see the proton, but the proton moves very, very fast, about half the speed of light at the time it comes in. So the proton doesn't spend a lot of time in the vicinity of the electrons, but every time that the proton sees an electron, that electromagnetic interaction between the positive and negative charge strips a minute amount of energy off the proton. So that means the proton is continuously slowing down. It's going slower and slower. And as the protons go slower, it starts spending more time in the vicinity of the electron, and more energy can be transferred. So the slower the proton goes, the more energy get transferred. So now you can see, if you go slower and slower, the more and more you lose energy. So what happens then, as the proton goes into the medium, the rate of energy transfer is inversely proportional to the square of the speed. Now, that means if the speed becomes very low at some point, the rate of energy loss goes up dramatically. And the more energy loss, the sooner you run out of energy. So what happens is that you get to a point where the proton just starts slowing down at a very rapid speed, drop a lot of its energy, and stop abruptly at a point. And of course, the same thing with the heavy ions. Now, the protons are much lighter, so they can a little bit scatter a little bit off the main beam path, and they can also end up slightly deeper and slightly shallower. So there's a little bit of what they call range straggling. But nevertheless, the proton beam is extremely sharp. It stops within about 4 millimeter, and it is defined to the left or the right with a dose fall off, could be as sharp as 2 or 3 millimeters from the high dose to the low dose region. So you get actually a very sharp beam, and it stops at the point of the tumor and no dose beyond the tumor. So it doesn't go through like the X-rays. And that way we can do much higher conformal radiation therapy with protons and heavy ions and give much less dose to the target than outside the tumor.
Yeah. So I'm trying to upload your presentation in. Just give me 1 second. That's a little giving a hard time because if you can send
Uh,
me, yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm
no
going to
problem. I
upload
can share my screen as well if you need to.
just you can share actually the screen if you know. Yeah, you're sharing the screen, right?
I will
No, no,
try
I
to.
will share the screen. I will share the screen. Just
Can
let
you?
me, yeah, let me try that.
Did you receive my presentation?
Yeah, can you see that? I received it, but then it's giving me a little. I don't know why it's blocking me. That
Uh,
let me see that if I can.
I can try share. Select the tab to share entire screen. We'll do entire screen. Okay, let me share here.
Yeah, you can share probably.
Okay, people will see me now.
I'm trying to cancel it, but it's not canceling. I don't know.
Can you see my screen, Ramana?
Yeah, just 1 second. I have a little problem here with the Google Drive. It is giving me a little trouble. I don't
Do
know
you have?
why. Yeah,
Can
now I can see. Okay, let us see that if you can if you can bring it. I try to bring your presentation. Yeah, it's there. I think it's there. I don't know.
can do we have any communication with the other people on the call?
No, why? That is some people are calling.
No, no. I'm asking whether they can see it.
Yeah, that's you can see now. You can see that is yours.
Okay, right. So I'll just go back here and we talk about what Leo Cancer Care. I'm the chief scientific officer for Leo Cancer Care. Is doing is to go into the paradigm of upright radiation imaging, upright imaging and radiation therapy. And as we talked about all the forms of radiation therapy, we believe that if we go upright, it can have huge clinical benefits. And what is meant with upright? The current paradigm for radiation therapy and imaging is to have the patient lie down and the beam rotates around the patient. Now, we say the new paradigm is, can we do upright where we keep the beam stationary and rotate the patient? So
What is
it's
the purpose of what is the advantage of being upright position? Is it comfort or is it a clinically more significant also by staying
yeah,
upright?
yeah. I have a slide. Let's hold that thing
Okay.
and then I'll walk through the slide quickly. So that's just the concept of upright. And I just want to show this slide that in the beginning days in 1956,
Okay.
patients were treated upright. That was the first variant Linac at Stanford. And but the patients were all in those days were all late diagnosis. The patients were very sick. They were typically bedbound and were forced to lie down. But nevertheless, this is how patients were treated. But then in 2024 right now, we all deal with earlier diagnosis. Patients are born mobile, and we believe the patient, we can go back to the paradigm of upright. Now, what's the benefits of it? Okay, just want to say sure that Leo Cancer Care then developed a positioner that can position the patient seated or somewhere semi-standing, and we have a device here that push on the knees, and the patient basically sit on the heels, knees, and the bottom. And then we developed a CT scanner that goes around the patient. It's a dual energy CT scanner. And now this machine that positions the patient upright and image the patient upright with a CT scanner can be placed in front of any radiation therapy beam. And we believe there's already a little bit of evidence building up that every part of the patient's body that show here, 73% of all cancers involve liver, lung, head and neck, breast, and prostate, is actually better treated in the upright position from a psychosomatic perspective, an anatomical perspective, gravitation perspective, and everything.
So
We of course cannot.
yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, explain to me why what is the cost benefits and yeah, go ahead, please, please.
Yeah. The next slide is actually one, but I just want to point out here that if you want to treat upright, you kind of have a limit. You cannot treat from the upper thigh down. So this, we can only treat from the thigh upwards. It's understandable if you want to treat a patient's knee in this upright position, the patient's head will be through the ceiling of the room, so it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
I'll skip over this slide for the moment. But here's the three pillars of why we want to do upright, what we
Yes.
call upright renaissance. The first one is the improved patient experience. It's a more human posture, and we never go into any battle lying down. We never lie down unless we sleep. We do nothing lying down. We always attack problems upright, so the patient feel much more empowered, more participating. The patient can do eye-to-eye contact with the people, and you do not have to go lie down in a very threatening and vulnerable position. The next one is, of course, a huge reduction in cost. I mean, if you do not have to rotate the radiation beam, and that's more relevant in the proton therapy space, where rotating this very expensive and very difficult beam to rotate around the patient is very expensive. And we can actually make these machines now mobile. If you just rotate the patient's body is used to rotating. We rotate all the time. We actually never still. Rotate the patient's body is far easier than rotating the beam. And then
So how do you reduce the cost of it? Because gantry is a big gantry moving around, and the moving this, maintaining all these paths for the beam, high beam is a very expensive. If you're shooting one straightforward shoot with the revolving chair is much better. That's what you're saying. It is not. It's a lot. You can cut down the cost that way. Is
right,
that right?
and the shielding, you also have to shield the beam only in one
Yes.
direction primarily, right?
Correct.
Now, also, because the beam is stationary, we can actually be much smarter of how we deliver the beam. How do you collimate the beam? How do you steer
Yes.
the beam? How do you switch it on and off? And all those things becomes just 10 times easier in the upright position. So all we really need to do, rotate the patient instead of rotating the beam. The total in the proton and carbon ion space, the size of the treatment room reduced from a 3-story type building to a single story, and the shielded volume goes to about typically between 10 and 16 times smaller. So
As the Nick, I was involved in a nuclear machine one time. Sinclair is called. They used to use a rotating chair. Actually, that is not. They use a rotating chair.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's the whole thing. So that's back to the past. We're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
back to the past to
Back to the
rotate.
past. Yeah. That's a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
So
and we are making good progress. We have Leo Cancer Care has about 15 signed contracts, and another 5 are coming for the rest of the year. So
I,
the train has left the station. People are adopting this. People see the value of much less expensive radiation systems, much smaller, and these proton machines can now fit into existing X-ray therapy machine rooms, right?
Okay, let me just give me a break a couple of minutes while you are staying there. Stay there. I want to bring a Dr. Uli Chetipalli. Tomorrow there is the Innovator MD conference starting just I want to bring him for a couple of minutes and then talk about the tomorrow conference. He just joined us. Uh, Dr. Chetipalli, just welcome to the Medwix webcast. Just tell us a little. I'm talking about Nick is a very revolutionary guy.
Yeah.
He is
Yeah.
passionate about it. How to doing a cancer treatment. He's coming up with the new innovations. Pride position chair, as you are hearing at. So, Dr. Chatterpalli, that you are having a tomorrow big conference. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Ramana, and Nick. Thank you for that great innovation. It sounds fantastic, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Um, so I am, I'm the host and also the founder of Innovator MD. Innovator MD is a community of healthcare people, physicians, nurses, techs, and other technologists like Nick. So we talk about innovation in healthcare, and so I have 30 plus speakers that are coming over the next 3 days, starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. PST, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we have keynotes by some prominent physicians and other researchers and reporters. Um, for example, we have Tom Mueller coming. He talks about dialysis machines and the dialysis industry, and he wrote a book on it. We also have Dr. Marty Macri, who is a physician surgeon
John
at
Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins. Yep, he's coming. He's one of the keynote speakers. He's going to talk about his thesis on blind spots in healthcare and how to solve those problems. We also have Dr. Harvey Castro. He's the expert in Chat GPT and how to use that in healthcare. Um, and we have, Dr. Apurv Gupta, who is a proponent of the concept of introducing love into healthcare organizations and how that changes the paradigm on what it means to be a healthcare practitioner in a healthcare delivery company. We have some amazing speakers, both large and small, and working on their ideas and innovations and concepts that they're bringing to table. Our main mission at Innovator MD is to elevate these innovations and create a platform and a network of people who can support innovations. So, Nick, I invite you to come join us and take part in it, and feel free to follow up after this. We also have on last day, Saturday, we have what we call a startup showcase, where we are bringing in innovations that are unique and also very different from what you see in the market. And so there'll be judges, there'll be investors, there'll be people asking questions and critiquing things. And so it's a wonderful ecosystem that we have built. It's the largest physician innovation platform. So I want you to check out innovatormd.com. And
InnovatorMD.com. Dr. Uli Chettipalli is a very prominent physician in Silicon Valley. He's been here a long time. I think Innovator MD, I attended a few of his events. They are wonderful, really. Highly recommended. So tomorrow they can join. They can register in the InnovatorMD.com, right? That
yeah,
is
and look for
tomorrow. What time is starting tomorrow, Dr. Uli?
so the event is called Innovator MD World Congress 2024, and we do this every year, every summer. And the event starts at 8 a.m. PST.
So the guest speakers or the keynote speakers are coming in first, and then after that.
Yep.
Okay, that very good. You're all. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving it that
Yes.
head up. Thank you, sir. And
Thank you.
we'll talk with you later a little bit, Dr. Uli.
All
So
right.
the Nick, you want to say something?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great to meet you, Dr. Uli. I'm on my way to England for the weekend, so I would not be able to participate. But let's stay in touch. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, Ramana can connect us via email. I'd love to stay in touch. I am
Sure.
innovative by heart and feel there's many problems we still need to solve.
Oh
Nick
yeah.
is a
So
very true innovator. Yeah.
plenty.
You know.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Uli.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you for
Bye bye.
joining. Okay,
Thank you.
bye. You stay, Nick. Just
Yeah, I can still
go,
stay
Nick.
on.
So let us talk about, yeah, very interesting. So we are talking about as a revolution in healthcare. We need a cancer is growing everywhere. In India is also growing. I'm interviewing tomorrow a doctor from India. She's saying that the cancer is growing in cervical cancer and other cancers. What are the so how do we reduce the cost? Cost of cancer treatment cost is or exuberant. People they file bankruptcies. How do we solve this global healthcare crisis?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think this technology that we're developing, first of all, we develop it for. It's a very sophisticated machine. I do want to end up doing autonomous treatment. If you put the patient in a certain position, let's say you put the patient on a chair, the patient is really comfortable. That's how we spend a lot of time. You to make the patient relax. Then the CT scan that comes down, scan the patient. You have every piece of information that you need to now bring the beam to the patient and irradiate the patient. So think about, I'm projecting 10, 15 years ahead. I'm in the middle of a desert in Africa, and I have a machine on the back of a truck, and the patient gets strapped in, and I have experts sitting elsewhere in the world, top physicians in
Yeah.
India, in wherever, that can review the information that comes in, and you can have the machine deliver the radiation to the patient. So that's the way we're going to solve radiation therapy in the developing country, where the bottleneck will always be highly sophisticated trained people. But we can take the machine to the people, measure where the patient is, measure with the CT scanner, and apply the radiation prescribed by a radiation oncologist that could sit elsewhere. So I think we need to make this the technology rock solid. Often there's a this horrible misconception that you can send a 10-year-old machine or a used machine into the developing countries, and that's just horribly wrong. You need to send the machine that's the most sophisticated machine that can actually operate without any technical support, without any expertise. That's the machine that need to go. And my colleagues and friends in South Africa, together with Lawrence Court from MD Anderson, had already started developing tools that can do uh, these calculations, these highly sophisticated calculations of radiation, can do that automatically, and it can actually do it as good as the humans can do it. So that's the first step. If we can follow up with a machine that can then apply that, measure where the patient is, and apply the radiation in a very, very safe manner, then I think we have a tool that can bridge that gap.
So chair is agnostic, right? You can use any kind of beam, not only the X-rays, electrons, gamma rays, or proton therapy or heavy ions. The chair is agnostic to the radiation. Only problem is that we need to manage that beams.
Yeah, but our system goes in front of any beam. So we are also standardizing the way we do radiation therapy, whether you use protons or electrons or whatever. The way you position the patient is better, and the patient can actually participate. So we are often people, it's not my statement, often people say that the most intelligent um, unit in the treatment room is actually the human brain that we're not using in the treatment of cancer. We actually expecting the patient just go lie down and do nothing. Where I see the future is that we actually have the patient participate and say, I know I'm sitting too much to the left, so let me shift myself a little bit to the right. And at that point, you say, okay, now hold still, and you can use different techniques to help the patient hold still.
Another challenge is, Nick, not only you're shooting the beams to treat cancer, but you have to have a imaging aspect at the same time, real time. What tell us a little bit about the imaging aspect of that real time imaging acquisitions and treating the same time in real time.
Yeah, so this is not what we're starting. Not this real time. We just scan the patient and would apply the beam within like 30 seconds or a minute after you did the scan. But the CT scan is a full three-dimensional acquisition of all the anatomy and everything you need. Now, because the patient is in upright position and you have a lot of space around the patient, we can add other technologies to actually measure in real time, where if there's patient motion, and there's many different techniques we can use to measure in real time what's happening. You could, for example, shoot low energy x-rays through the patient's body to see where the target is. But the bottom line is, all the measuring apparatus and all the machines that you do for measuring is now stationary, because only the patient rotate. Everything in the room is stationary, so it must be much easier to
Even CT,
install this.
including CT, right? There's no
Yeah,
gantry, nothing else there.
yeah, yeah,
MR.
right. So
So
that's the benefit of upright. Everything simplifies from a technology perspective. Only thing we need to do is to be able to immobilize the patient, hold the patient still, and then rotate the patient.
okay. So now, how is there any make a difference if there's a patient is too big or too small? Is there any problem there in patient load?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very too small. Of course, is at the pediatric level, so that's really not a problem. You can very small kids just get anesthetized so that they be put to sleep, and then you treat them in that state. Very large and very obese patients is often problematic to have them lie down because the bed and the
Yeah.
couches is not designed to cantilever such a huge weight out. But the patient positioner eventually will be able to carry any weight, up to a very large weight. And then the next problem just is the size of the CT scanner, which is 85 centimeters, and most patients would fit into that board of the CT scanner. So I think treating very obese, very heavy patients upright is actually the better way than to lie down. Um, but we still have to do some development work to make very heavy patients
So
treatable.
where is your company stands at this time? Do you have a CT available right now? And can you use the CT for other things and other body? Can you do brain CT and all the other things with it?
Yeah,
ENT.
so our CT scanner is a full diagnostic quality CT scanner. The scanner is in operation. We have not scanned humans yet because we're just in the process of getting through the FDA approval process. But there's about 6 of these scanners now installed in various places across the country. And we will have full FDA approval filing in the next couple of months on it. And then we'll get the FDA approval somewhere in the new year. First patient treatments with this device is scheduled for the middle of next year. And from there on, as I said, we have multiple projects that we need to continue to commission and start treating patients.
You're starting something in South Africa also, right? I spoke with one of the cancer advocate person, Salome Meyer. She joined from South Africa. She was talking about cervical cancer is one of the prevalent cancers there, and breast cancer. So how does it play a role in let us say in your home country, South Africa, Elon Musk country? I'm not too far from Elon Musk factory
Yeah.
here.
We don't have a definitive project in South Africa yet, but we're working with several institutions that see the value of it. One, when you talk about cervical cancer is an important one because as you go upright, the abdominal fluids is pushing down into the
Yeah.
pelvic triangle and actually stabilizes I published a paper 2 years ago to show that in the upright position, the prostate position is not a functional bladder full, because whether the bladder is full or empty, there's just different fluids that pushes down into the pelvic triangle. That same will be true for cervical cancer. So I do believe the best way to treat cervical cancer is upright. And so we are working with a group in Bloemfontein in South Africa that is interested in seeing if there's a way that it can find the financial means and to develop an upright. Actually, we are developing an upright X-ray therapy machine, and that would be a good machine to start doing cervical treatments, for example, in the African context. So again, I am in a reasonable contact with those folks. There is no active project yet, but we hope to get something going in the very near future.
How big is the CT scanner for imaging things that you do? Is it a huge one machine, or is it because it is a just tell us a little bit about the size of the machine.
Yeah, so the CT scanner, you want to have the inside of the ring need to be around about 85 centimeters in diameter. And then, of course, you have to have an X-ray tube swinging around plus the detector. So eventually the inside diameter of the ring is about, let's just say 1 meter. And the outside diameter of the ring is about 1.8 meters.
You can
So
put
it's
in
not,
the truck, any truck, right?
yes, yes. The current design has a bit of a height limitation, but that's easy to be solved. The height, so no, the CT scanner plus the X-ray machine will easily go into a truck, and we are working on a mobile machine. Now, talking about that, we are developing an upright diagnostic machine, because a lot of times it's much better to scan the patient upright for CT scanning. There is about 150, 160 upright MRI scanners, magnetic resonance imaging scanners worldwide, but 150 scanners is nothing worldwide. There's probably about 12,000 CT scanners. Now, no more, maybe, I don't know that number. I'm confused with the radiation therapy machines. I would think there's probably 100,000
Yeah, yes, a
diagnostic.
lot more than that. Yeah, because they're
Uh,
imaging, they're used for imaging
right.
diagnostic
So,
purposes.
but I give you a simple example. If a patient, if patient have cardiac problems, the cardiac system looks completely different upright than supine, because the pressure on uh, the veins are completely different upright. So it's best for a doctor to evaluate cardiac stuff in the upright position. Another very simple case is hernias, right? If you
Yeah.
have a hernia, you cannot see the stuff protruding through the diaphragm in the supine position. As soon as you upright, you can see it. The other thing is weight bearing stuff along your spinal axis. So there's a huge need for doing CT scans in upright position. We start developing a CT scanner for radiation therapy, but that same scanner is of sufficient quality to also be used as a diagnostic scanner. So one of our components is to enter into the space of diagnostic imaging in an upright standing or seated position.
How long is going to take to approval that, to get approval for that upright position CT scan? Where how far you are into it?
Yeah, I mean, we are getting approval for a CT scanner that's in the works, and once that CT scanner is approved, then the diagnostic machine is just a subset of that, so that should be fairly easy. But that is scheduled for 2025 to 2026 in that time frame.
Let us talk about the beams, beam deliveries. Proton requires. I attended. I don't know whether you remember or not. I think I remember you before I came to my podcast in this year's coming second time. First time I attended Emory University. I thought that some hotel gave a talk in Atlanta. I attended that one and I was so impressed. Proton therapy but it required a huge structure for the proton therapy. So a lot of times, proton therapy has some advantages, particularly children's treating the cancer with the children. So how do you reduce the size of these delivery systems? Either electron therapy is the easiest one. Probably electron beams are easier one to produce than the proton and heavy carbon ions.
Yeah, the accelerator still, I mean, the proton is 1,836 times heavier than an electron. So the accelerator is significantly bigger. But several companies have started developing extremely small accelerators. And one company called Mevion Medical Systems developed an accelerator that can just sit next to the patient. So the accelerator is literally 3 meters away from the patient. And together with our system, that proton therapy machine now actually takes a smaller footprint than a typical X-ray treatment machine. So
We
we are able now to fit the proton machine into an existing room where that was designed for a X-ray machine.
Really, you
Yeah.
can fit the entire proton therapy machine into the a simple X-ray room.
Yes.
That's going to be a revolution. In fact,
And,
that's right.
and the first one of that is being installed right now at Stanford, and then Baycare in Tampa, and Morristown in New Jersey is signed agreements with Mevion to install those. The first one that will treat upright with protons in basically a room that is the same size as a linear accelerator room will probably be at Stanford in 2025.
Amazing. So you did so the delivery systems are still, with all the money that we spend, still is not that sophisticated. They're still evolving the delivery systems. But he came up with a very innovative idea. That is a chair is a simple idea, but it's just a chair, you call. But it's a truly innovative. Simple, Steve Jobs called the simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Right.
That is that is really, you're reducing the cost, reducing the size, reducing the cost, reducing the affordability. All of them are the it's a very important in size, and all of the particularly countries like India and China and countries like Africa, in African continent. These are all big challenges in rural areas. I was talking with the doctor in India. He was saying the biggest challenge we have is the rural areas. We cannot send any machines to do anything in there.
Yeah,
So it's all, a lot of them by the time they came in, stage 4 cancer by the time they came in.
yeah.
So that is, I think we have a global challenges in the cancer treatment, cancer detection. What about the screening side? Do you have some ideas about the screening side of the cancer?
Yeah. That was the other thing. When you go for a chest, or when the doctor thinks there's something wrong with your lungs, you never lie down to take a lung X-ray. You always stand up to take a lung X-ray. And, I grew up in the African context. I had to have a lung X-ray every year to look for TB. Tuberculosis is a big problem in Africa when I grew up as a kid. So I always, as a young adult, I always had to get chest X-ray. So the reason why you're standing up for a chest X-ray is because the lungs are more expanded,
Correct.
and you get a better density ratio, and you can see stuff better. Now we can do a lung CT with the same effort as a lung X-ray. So you just sit down, the CT scanner comes down, scan your chest. Within 15, 20 seconds, you get a lung CT, and the detectability of cancers and everything is much more. Now I'll give you some statistics. If we can do lung screening, if we can do low dose CT screening on lung,
Hmm.
for every, and this is the national average. Let me give you other statistics. If you want to save one life from a colon cancer, you need to do 5,000 colonoscopies. If you want to save one life from a breast cancer, you need to do 1,300 mammograms.
Hmm.
For every 300 lung scans we do, we save a life. And there's certain parts of the country in the previously tobacco farmers and mining industries, one out of 100 CT scans of the lung will save a life. So if we develop a machine, if we can have the patient, basically anybody that lives in those areas should go through a low dose lung screen, you can really see that very well. And so that was, we believe that. And why not doing it supine? Supine is much harder. You just go sit down, the scanner comes down. It's like walking into your local CVS or pharmacy, and you just go sit down and get a lung screen, and the doctor can read it. So I do believe that is the future. That's the way we're going to curb lung cancers. Now,
Let
if
me
you
just
can pick up lung cancer at T1 stage, it's 85, 90% curable. As soon as you go to T2 stage, if it's down at T3 and 4, it's only 25% curable. So we have to detect it earlier. And that's where lung screening comes in.
Well, the breast cancer still they use MRI, right? Breast screening.
The breast screening is still, the majority is still with mammograms, and then other
MRI.
modalities from
Yeah.
there.
So you said the low dose. How does the low dose? How can you do the resolution, high resolution with the low dose? Are you using artificial intelligence? Any AI is present here? I'm from
Yeah.
Silicon Valley. We need to ask that question.
AI is big. I mean, there's just a lot of, and it also was developed by several scholars, and it started initiating that during the COVID time, where the best way to detect COVID was to do it by using a CT scan. But so they developed techniques that you can actually use a low dose CT and use AI interpolations or AI filters to make a high dose CT from that. But just looking at the low dose, because again the contrast is so high in the lung, you can see a lot of stuff in the lung with very little dose if you do it in a tomographic manner.
One of the doctors I was talking with is the AI in radiology. He's talking about is almost you can reduce through AI 30% of the reduction in the dosage. Is that it's possible? He's saying with the AI using AI,
Yeah.
that is a dramatic decrease in the dosage. Because CT, that is one of the main concerns of all the patients, right? The dosage problem is there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very important to say that publicly, is that the benefit, the radiation benefit, the benefit you get from the little bit of radiation dose in the lung by far outweigh any side effects it could come from the radiation. So I would want to state it publicly that people should not be afraid for getting a lung CT. If you feel anything is wrong, go get a lung CT as early as you can, because that's a very definitive test to see if something's wrong in the lung.
So how long is going to take your systems to get into the global market? Everybody's this is a very badly needed. India, for example, you need to go through regulatory process in every country, or you have to is FDA approval is enough for a lot of the countries? How does it work?
I'm not an expert there, but I think most countries have their own. I mean, a lot of countries slave off the FDA process, and then they need to be endorsed. In China, you have to get your own FDA, CFDA. Same with Japan, and in Europe, you have to go. Of course, they have CE marking. I think most other countries would probably just slave off one of these regulatory approvals. But that's probably not the end of the. I mean, technology development. I mean, the regulatory process is painful, takes a lot of time, but that's not the main thing. It'll take a little time for people to accept it. It'll take a time for us to get to the first patient treatments and show that it's better. And it's not if, it's when. So as I said, the train has left the station. This is now a reality. Upright imaging and radiation therapy is now a reality, and I do think it's going to revolutionize the way we treat cancer. It's not only cheaper. We did spend a lot of time on the cost, but it's also better for the patient. It's much quicker. It's much easier. It's much more comfortable, and the psychosomatic component of cancer treatment is very important.
So you're addressing a three important ones: access, quality, and cost. The
Yeah.
iron triangle. I think that is the main thing for the cancer. If you can cut down if you solve that iron triangle, if you solve all three of them, is a good idea.
Yeah.
That cost to quality and access, all the is a big major problems in the worldwide, right? Cancer, people come to India for Apollo, or they come to United States for the cancer treatment. Africa, a lot of Africans go to India for cancer
Yeah.
treatment.
Yeah.
So this is really sad. And then she was saying that there in Africa, South Africa, all the cancer hospitals are flooded with other African countries are coming there. So they don't have the infrastructure to deal with the cancer in every country. That is a big needed. I think your company can make a difference. I think it is going to be a future of the care of the cancer. It is truly a revolutionary what you do. You're a fellow physicist, and I love it. I love to talk with you. It's always exciting. And what do you think the final words you say that about your progress, and when is going to be really people are dying to get these hands on those machines? When is going to be available? Can you do it right now under the CE or any other? How do you do that right now in
Yeah, we
India
are
or any other?
aggressively installing it and going through a regulatory process. And then, of course, so the first patient treatments is scheduled for roughly the middle of next year. And I think we should have about 15 or 16 systems in operation less than a year and a half from then. So there's a huge adoption curve. So when the first machines, of course, you have to go through a regulatory process, quality assurance, acceptance testing, and all this stuff. We're working around the clock to get to that point. But you only do that once. Of course, now you have to then get CE approval in Europe and all the different approvals. But once you get through the regulatory process, really just making sure you follow a certain design procedure. And from there on, it's just different pieces of documents you have to submit. So once you've done it once, it becomes easier. So bottom line is first patient treatments on our system probably in the middle of next year. And from there on, it's going to start have extremely rapid adoption of it.
I'm Indian, so I'm going to ask you the question. Is there India is on the radar for you? The India is yeah.
Yeah, we talked extensively with folks, several institutions in India. I am very passionate about India, and similar that I'm passionate about the African content, but India has all the means. I think the people is of the, definitely will work well in the Indian community. They already have proton therapy there. They have fairly large amount of X-ray machines. What we now need to do is give them an X-ray machine that can work in a simpler fashion, simpler but better.
Yes.
and easier to install and easier to maintain.
Thank you so much, Nick. You live in Knoxville, right? Knoxville, Tennessee.
I still in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, I have a good friend, Oak Ridge. I go to Oak Ridge. I used to go there.
Yeah.
It's one of those centers, nuclear. The Oppenheimer, all the nuclear stuff started in Oak Ridge.
Yeah.
As I call secret town. Thank you. It is truly an honor to talk with you. It's a very informative. You're truly revolutionary. You're like a mentor for people like physicists like us. I know we want to be in your place, in your shoe. But
Right.
it is truly remarkable. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks for the invitation, and good night. Thank
Good
you.
night, all of you. Bye. Good night, all of you. No, this is.
Telling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it